is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. Bad luck's always coming my way.
For today's Grimm adventure, we find ourselves roaming the streets of Chicago. And my God, they're beautiful. Well, this part, I think this is technically the north side, Lincoln Park area. Our game plan today is to visit the site of the St. Valentines Day Massacre. And we'll get there, I promise. But I'm just really enjoying walking these streets and the alleys. Even the houses are phenomenal. I mean, look at that. If it wasn't for the snow and the cold, I can see us living here. We love LA. Chicago. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre happened on February 14th, 1929, Valentine's Day. Chicago was in the grip of Prohibition, and the gangster who was pretty much in control of the streets was a man by the name of Bugs Moran. His main rival at the time was a man by the name of Al Capone. You know him, I know him, one of the most famous gangsters in history. And he was living it up in the lap of luxury in Florida, but he wanted control of the liquor here in Chicago. Bugs Moran had a building down here on North Clark Street. It wasn't a hideout or anything like that. It was a garage that pretty much housed the vehicles. They would work on them there. No different, just a simple garage. Now, a lot can happen over the years, especially since 1929, but for the most part, North Clark Street really hasn't changed that much at all. But there's one building that's no longer here, and that's 2122 North Clark Street, where the St. Valentine's Day Massacre happened. And it was a bloodbath. And that building, the garage, used to stand right over here in this vacant lot. Even though 2122 North Clark Street is gone, the building to the left, 2120, still remains. Now what's really cool about this, you see these columns on the left and right hand side of the door? You can see this building in every single photo taken of the garage the day after the massacre. All that remains of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre now is this vacant lot. It's a playground for squirrels and a place to put pumpkins. I say that because there are pumpkins and they're off to the left. Jessica's kind of hiding them. But towards the back, right where the grass hits the pavement, is where the massacre, the bloodbath, happened. Now here's where the story starts to get a little bit fun, where it starts turning into legend and lore. The crime technically is unsolved. Nobody knows who ordered the hit. It's widely believed that it was Al Capone, but nobody knows for sure. There were eyewitnesses, however, who say that a police car pulled up to the front of the garage. 2 police officers got out and 2 civilians. They went inside. It's about like 10, maybe 11 o'clock in the morning, and they heard a bunch of bullets, what sounded like bullets, like a whole bunch of gunfire. Not too long after that, the 2 police officers came back out of the building. This time the civilians were in handcuffs, talk about cover, and then they drove away. Interesting, right? Out of all the stories that I've read about this place, the one that I find the most interesting is what happened in the alleyway, the back door to the garage. Now, supposedly there was another car that pulled up behind the garage as well as the front, and some of Bugs Moran's men showed up and they saw the cop car and they wrote down the license plate and they turned and they left because they didn't want to get in trouble. Now, Capone's henchmen had no idea that Bugs Moran wasn't going to be here. They thought he was going to be here, somebody who fit the description. But they were here with some malicious intent, that's for sure. When it comes down to it, all that's really known about what happened on February 14th, 1929 is a group of unknown assailants entered this garage and forced 7 men to stand along the back wall of the garage. And then with 2 Tommy guns, they believe, they opened fire and just let them have it. And my God, was it a bloodbath. Now, oddly, 1 person survived. Even though he was hit 14 times, he had 14 bullet wounds. They took him to the hospital and they asked him, who did this, who shot you? And he said, nobody shot us. I mean, come on. Died not too long after that, and to this day, nobody really knows. But like I said, it's believed it was Al Capone. The wall that the men stood in front of is right back there, right where the end of this building meets the tree. Now, when they tore the building down, the bricks just didn't disappear. They were actually bought by a private collector, and he had them for quite some time, and eventually he sold them to the Mob Museum. So you can actually go to the Mob Museum in Las Vegas and see the St. Valentine's Day bricks. They do this crazy little thing where it's like a time thing. They're behind a wall, and then it raises and you can take a look at them. You can still see the bullet holes in the actual bricks. Now, I'm not really expecting to find anything back here, but I figured let's take a walk down the alleyway. Again, just walking history. Now, that building that you see in the center of your screen with the wooden staircase, that's the one with the columns in the front. And we're not going to go on the property. But right past that silver car, you see the blue car, the white car, then the silver car, and then the tree. That's where the backside of the garage would have been. There we go. Now, of course, Bugs Moran and Al Capone are long gone. And if I'm not mistaken, Bugs Moran is actually buried at Leavenworth Prison in Kansas. But Al Capone, even though he was living in Florida at the time, he's buried here in Chicago. We now find ourselves in Mount Carmel Catholic Cemetery, where Al Capone and his family are buried. His real family, not his mob family, but they weren't always here. There's a photo that was taken on February 6, 1947, whenever they dug up Capone and his family and moved them across town to this cemetery from Mount Olivet Cemetery because of vandalism. Maybe that's why the Capone family plot is so close to the entrance of the cemetery. As soon as you come in, the first road on the right takes you right to it. And it's really hard to miss. And that's right here. You can see the giant tombstone with the Capone family name on it. Even though the family plot is really close to the front of the cemetery, it looks like it's getting a lot of visitors. There's a lot of different things here, from witches to teddy bears to flowers, even some trash. But at least nothing's being vandalized, nothing dug up. And pretty much front and center is the final resting place of the legendary gangster Al Capone. 1899 to 1947. It says, "My Jesus mercy." Now, when he died, it wasn't a hail of bullets or anything mob related. He actually spent a good deal amount of time in prison, and his health was deteriorating, and he ended up dying at his home in Miami, I think, from a heart attack brought on by untreated syphilis. Crazy. And with that being said, thank you for joining us on another grim adventure, this time in Chicago, telling the story of the bloodbath known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and the final resting place of Al Capone. Until next time, happy Halloween.
Wherever I come, bad luck is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. A bad luck's